So today we're going to be doing a science lesson and we're going to be looking at creating an ocean food chain. So last week we looked at, we started our food chain topic and we looked more at animals on the land, okay? So we're going to be taking it down to sea. I know some of you might have thought about sea food chains last time, but we're going to look a bit more specifically about the kinds of creatures that will be under the sea food chains, okay? So first of all, we've got a little warm-up. And I'd like you to think about the terminology that we learned last week from our lesson. And I'd like you to pause this and create a little glossary that you can use. Okay, so pause the video now, and then when you're finished, I'll go through the answers with you. Okay? Right then. So hopefully you've got a producer that's always at the start of a food chain. So without a producer, we wouldn't have a food chain. Okay? And often that's a green plant we learned last week. Now we'll have those under the sea as well, and they create their own food from the sunlight, okay? Then a consumer, that's anything that eats something else within a food chain, okay? So anything after that first producer that's eating something is a consumer, okay? Then we've got prey, so that is an animal that's eaten by another animal, okay? Unlucky for them. Then we've got a predator, so a predator is an animal that eats another animal, okay, they're often lurking around after their prey. Then we've got a carnivore, so that is an animal that eats meat, okay, or a person that eats meat as well, which can be carnivores, so that's where they get their energy from to survive. A herbivore is something that eats plants to survive, okay, and that can be like fruit, vegetables too in human sense. And then an omnivore, they eat both, so they eat meat and plants or fruit and vegetables, okay? So hopefully you got on okay with that. Now, like I just said, last week we looked mainly at animals on land. We were looking at kind of woodland animals, thinking about farms and things as well, including humans. But then this week we're going to be looking more at ocean food chains. So just to start us off, we've got a bit of a deep dive. Remember, there's not really any right or wrong answers for a deep dive. You're just trying to get some ideas generated at home. What animals do you think could live in the Pacific Ocean? Some of you might be ocean experts and you might know more names than me. So have a little pause now and write down any creatures you think might live there. Okay? Right then, hopefully that's warmed your brains when you've got thinking about loads of creatures that live under the sea, especially in the Pacific Ocean. So if you download this PowerPoint and click on the link, there's a BBC Earth video and it is talking all about ocean food chains, okay? And it's focusing on turtles. I know lots of you like turtles, so you'll find that quite interesting. Have a little watch and that might give you some ideas for what animals you'd like to include in your ocean food chain today. Okay, so what is a food chain? We did touch on this last week. So a food chain shows how each animal gets its food. Food chains show the ways that living things depend on each other to stay alive. So without certain things, the food chain would kind of collapse, wouldn't it? So it really is about them depending on each other, and that's how it's a chain, okay? So thinking back to last week, what do these arrows represent? Okay, have a little think. Well, they represent is eaten by. So we've got the plankton here is eaten by. We've got a shell here. Some of you are probably thinking a shell, but a shell can contain lots of different things inside it. It can contain mollusks. We can have different, I've forgotten the name, crustaceans. There's lots of different things, little sea urchins that can be inside a shell. They're living things. And that shell is a bit like a home, protected. It's a bit like a house around us or a shell of a tortoise. It keeps that little sea creature safe. Okay, so there are living things inside. And then we've got the arrow is eaten by. We've got a starfish here, that could be a seahorse or other small creatures under the sea. Okay, so let's go. Now we've got some little examples of food chains from under the sea here. So first of all, they can be found in all habitats as we started. We're focusing on the sea today. We might be looking at some different habitats like polar regions and things in future weeks. So we've got the seaweed here is eaten by this small fish, which is then eaten by the seal, which is then eaten by the shark. So you can see that food chain. Now, let's think about these questions. Which of these are predators? Think back, you might want to check your glossary. Which of these are predators? So remember, a predator is an animal that eats another animal. So this shark would be a predator, wouldn't he? Let's label him as a predator. So I've lost my pen, guys. You'll have to excuse for my scruffy handwriting with my finger. He's a predator because the shark is eating the seal. Is there any other predators there? There is, isn't there? So the seal is also eating the fish. So he would be a predator, or she. Predator, there we go. Okay, now the fish is eating the seaweed. Does that make him a predator as well? It doesn't, does it? He would be a consumer as well, just as these two are a consumer, because they're consuming something, but he's not a predator because he's not eating another animal, okay? I'm calling him a he, it could be a she as well for all we know. So, then we've got which ones are herbivores. So this little fish here, he's just eating a plant, isn't he? So he would be a herbivore. Remember, we've got that herb to give us a bit of a clue. So we've got a herbivore, and then we've got omnivores. So those are the animals that eat both. So seals, they might like to eat a bit of seaweed as well. You could do a little bit of research and find out exactly what they like to eat, because you might need to do a little bit extra today. So seals, we'll say for now that they're a carnivore, because we know that the seal is eating another animal, okay, so it's meat. And then again with the shark. But you guys could check and correct me whether the seal could be an omnivore if he likes to eat seaweed and things as well, okay, you could find that out. We've got another one here with seaweed, and we've got a little bit of this is a prawn, I think, but is it in his shell with his legs still? So a type of crustacean. I know I like prawns in my pasta at the weekend. So you could have a little look and think, oh, humans can be part of food chains in the ocean as well, because these come from under the sea, but we can eat them as well, humans can, okay? So you could have a little go at labelling those, okay? Right then, so I would like you to use these different living things to draw your own food chain, okay? And you could just do this a bit of scrap paper or whiteboard if you've got one. And don't forget to draw the arrows to show who eats what, okay? It's really important that they're going the right way. So have a little look, pause now, have a go, and I'll show you the ones that I've come up with. So we've got here the seaweed, which is eaten by a crab, which is then eaten by a dolphin, which is then eaten by a whale. And we've also got the seaweed, which is eaten by a fish, which is eaten by a seal, which is then eaten by a shark. Okay, so see if you've got those. You could also then think about labelling those with carnivore, herbivore, omnivore, consumers, producers, predator, prey. Okay, so there's lots of different labelling that we could get on there. Now, we're coming to your task, okay? So this is your job. So first of all, you could create your own ocean food chain using these. And the idea is, if you can, you could chop them up and physically make your own food chain, okay? But if you have access to a printer, which is absolutely fine, just have a little look at that and you could write down your own and draw one, okay? Now, challenge one is to make 3 different food chains. A food chain with 3 different parts. And then challenge 2 is, can you make a food chain with 4 different parts, okay? Or for challenge 1, you could make 3 different simple food chains, okay? So with 2 or 3 parts to them. And then we've got task 2, so there's a little choice today, it's a bit like a menu. Some of you might like to do a couple. You could use this word map which shows lots of different sharks and different fish to really create a wow food chain. So rather than just saying a small fish, a big fish, a shark, you could be specific and choose some of these different creatures that live under the sea, under the ocean, and some specific sharks as well. Okay, I've certainly learned a few new names of sharks here. Okay, and then finally, you can then draw that into your book and label it. So we've got, you need to label the animals in your food chain. Tell me whether it's herbivore, carnivore, omnivore, which is the producer, and predator and prey. Okay, so there's lots for you to get on with. If you get that finished, we've got some things that will make you think a little bit deeper. So what would happen if there were no sharks in the ocean? What would happen? Think about it. Which would be the top predator? And would there be lots of them if there's nothing eating those? Have a little think about that. What would happen if the sun just disappeared? If there's no sunlight, what would happen? Because those producers, how do they create their own food? It's from sunlight, isn't it? So have a little think about that. What would happen to the food chain? Would that be detrimental to the rest of it? And then finally, what would happen if there were no plants in the sea? Think about what starts the food chain all the time. Have a little think about that. If there were no plants, would there even be a food chain? Okay, that could be a bit of a disaster, couldn't it? Okay, so I think that's brought us to the end of our lesson. We've also got a little word map here if you want to have a go at practicing some of those spellings correctly for when you come to label your food chain. But yeah, we're looking forward to seeing what ocean food chains you come up with. Ping them across to us, or any questions, just drop me or Mr. Ray an email. Okay, have a great day, guys. See ya.